Selected parts from the book My Life Story, written by Shri K.J.S. Dhillon, Part 3. As I had mentioned before, my classmate in Firozpur, Harish Jang Bahadur, was responsible for my entry into the NDA, the cradle of leadership, as he motivated the entire class to apply for the NDA examination. After passing the examination, the result of which I had randomly seen in a newspaper during a bus journey, I returned to my Mamaji's home in Firozpur to get ready for the next stage of the entry process, the Service Selection Board interview. I, along with another successful candidate and my long-time friend and classmate Harminder Singh Bhullar, whom we affectionately call Jimmy Bhullar, enrolled in the Minerva Academy in Chandigarh to prepare for the interview. After successfully appearing for the interview and also clearing the medical exam, both of which were held in Bhopal, I awaited the announcement of the merit list with tense anticipation until I received the call letter asking me to report for the training. My momentous journey as a member of the Indian Army began on the evening of 2nd January 1980 when Jimmy Bhullar and I boarded the Punjab Mail train from Firozpur to Pune, carrying all our stuff in unique customized trunks that are specifically made for army travel, as they can be conveniently pushed under a train berth or a bed in a barracks and can easily be fitted into awkward grooves and niches. The voyage began with an interesting incident at Kalyan station where we had to switch trains for Pune. Since we were carrying a lot of luggage crammed to the brim in the two trunks, the ticket collector ordered us to pay a fine of 80 rupees for our overweight trunks, a royal sum in those days. Alarmed at this hurdle, even before reaching our destination, we meekly told the ticket checker that the total cash both of us were carrying collectively was less than this amount, and we were in no position to pay the huge fine. So, the gentleman that he was, he took pity on two budding young soldiers of the nation and helped us by suggesting that we could do an inter trunk transfer of the excess weight in one box, making the other one fine free. While some excess items could be shoved into the shoulder bag, that is, jhola, that was available at the railway station itself, he also told us where it was being sold. This exercise helped us balance the weight distribution in the trunks, thereby substantially reducing the fine. Needless to say, this early lesson also helped me in managing the weight of my luggage during my numerous travels by air or train later in life. The term menace is frequently used in NDA, IMA, and the army, literally meaning beg, borrow, or steal to turn an adverse situation to our advantage. We learned our lessons well at Kalyan railway station prior to even entering the hallowed gates of the NDA. Later in the evening, we arrived at Pune railway station. Since we had reached Pune a day before the scheduled commencement of training on January 5, 1980, and having saved some precious cash at Kalyan railway station, we made elaborate plans to stay in a hotel for a day and watch some of the latest movies, which was our favorite pastime. However, this was not to be, as the Subedar Sahab from NDA, who was present at the railway station, immediately recognized our trunks, bundled us along with our luggage into an army 3-ton vehicle waiting outside and took us to Ghorpuri, Pune, where the first term training of NDA used to be conducted. This dashed our dreams of watching films, which would now be possible only when we would be granted liberty, that is, permission to go to the city on a Sunday once or twice during the entire training term of 6 months. Our army training was divided into two parts, with the first term of 6 months slated to take place in Ghorpuri in Pune, and the balance 5 terms in the main NDA campus at Khadakwasla. Just 2 months into the training, on the occasion of Holi, our group of about 12 cadets aged just around 17, 18 years procured some bhang to celebrate the festival, overriding the stipulation of prohibition of consumption of such things. As the offense was severe, we were marched up to the office of the Deputy Commandant, Commodore Vijay Singh Shekhawat, who subsequently rose to become Chief of the Naval Staff. Being the seniormost among all the transgressors, I was right at the front of the renegade group comprising 12 cadets. We were pretty sure that the punishment would be relegation, which implies losing one term at the NDA or becoming junior by 6 months and being compelled to train with the next batch, which is a rather unpleasant experience. As I stood crestfallen in his office and the charge of consuming of bhang was read out, Commodore V.S. Shekhawat asked me crisply, looking directly into my eyes, "Did you take it?" My innocent and honest reply was, "Yes, sir." The next question was even more stern and crisp. "Why?" As per the drill sphere teachings, one is supposed to look directly into the eyes of the person one is talking to. I could see the smoldering lava in the eyes of the deputy commandant and knew exactly what lay in store for me and my 11 compatriots waiting outside for their respective turns to be marched in. My options to answer that blunt one word question were sorry, sir, or the rather longish but truthful explanation. Sir, I did not know that taking bhang on Holi is an offense, as everyone in my family enjoys it on the day of Holi as a part of the celebrations. I chose the latter and waited for the obvious outcome. However, my response must have struck an amicable chord with Commodore Shekhawat as he smilingly replied, in my family too, having it on Holi is a regular tradition. With these words, he told me to march out, and to my utter amazement, spared the relegation, but we were awarded 14 days restrictions, that is, certain physical drill and no liberty for the duration. Instead, we all continued with our original course, but it was a lesson well learnt, and we refrained from doing anything delinquent ever again, stringently adhering to all the rules and regulations. Liberty is a concession given a few months after the commencement of NDA training when the cadets passes the drill square test, a test to check his proficiency in drill movements. Aptly named Liberty actually implies liberation or getting permission to make a short visit to Pune town on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and is eagerly looked forward to by all cadets since prior to this they are not allowed to leave the NDA campus at all. Both Jimmy Buller and I were desperately awaiting the announcement of liberty as belonging to a small town in Punjab. We had not seen much of the outside world until then, and Pune seemed like a veritable El Dorado for us. Armed with our meager pocket money of rupees 10, we set forth towards Pune town, wondering how we would manage to finance a bus ticket, a movie, and lunch or snacks with this paltry amount. In the town, Jimmy and I were drawn towards a street vendor selling bhel puri at an affordable price of rupee 1, and the word puri immediately brought visions of hot deep fried bread back home in Punjab, a very welcome wholesome snack to launch our first liberty experience. Little did we realize that Bhel Puri, a Maharashtrian street food, has nothing to do with the puffed puri. After having consumed the initial serving of what we presumed was an appetizer, we kept waiting in vain for the vendor to serve us delectable puris, and he kept waiting for us to make the payment after he had served the dish of puffed rice mixed with spices and vegetables. Eventually, we paid up and walked out dejected at being deprived of our puris. Hence, our first liberty ended with a lesson in the diversity of Indian cultures and cuisines and an empty stomach as our budget had collapsed, preventing us from buying any more food. I must, however, issue a disclaimer here that Bhelpuri remains one of my favorite snacks till date. The training at the NDA also offered me the chance to indulge my passion for sports as the NDA affords an opportunity to every cadet to play all games including golf, squash and tennis in addition to the traditional troop games. During one such inter squadron football match in the second term of my training, I was the goalkeeper. At the NDA, such matches work on the principle of winner takes all and are imbued with the intensity of a proxy war and do or die situations for the two squadrons playing each other, as losing the game leads to complete loss of respect in the squadron for the losing team. In this particular match on 30th October 1980, inclement weather had left the playground very slippery. Thus, in trying to save a goal, I skidded on the slushy ground, hitting my hand on the goal post while trying to cushion my fall and ended up dislocating the index finger of my right hand so badly that my bones popped out of the finger. This was followed by a hilarious incident as after injuring my finger, I walked up to a fellow team member who was playing as the fullback on our side and tried to tell him about the incident. When he saw the gruesome sight of my finger bones smeared with blood and dangling out of the skin, he fainted, and everyone ran towards him in panic. An ambulance was immediately summoned. He was put on a stretcher and rushed to the hospital, whereas I, the person who was actually injured, was left standing on the ground, wondering what to do. Then I walked to the divisional officer present on the field, Lieutenant Anil Save, telling him that I too had suffered an injury. At first, he looked at my hand in utter disbelief and then gathered his wits to take me to the Khadakwasla military hospital on his motorcycle. Thereafter, in view of the seriousness of my injury, after being administered initial first aid at Khadakwasla, I was transferred to the military hospital at Kirki late at night, where the duty surgeon and anesthetist were called urgently to carry out a midnight surgery on my finger. The next day, as per the senior surgeon, the late night surgery had ostensibly not been done properly, so I was taken to the operation theatre again for the second surgery, with the senior surgeon opening up the finger and doing the operation again. When I came back to the ward, the duty surgeon who had performed the first surgery came on his rounds, and seeing my finger, he irately suggested that the surgery had again missed the mark and he would have to operate on it again. That is, the third surgery was being planned for me. In the meantime, a nursing assistant in the ward, a known all smart sick youth, hailing from Punjab, offered me the most practical advice under the circumstances. He said, सर, ये लोग आपका ऐसा ही खोलना जोड़ना करते रहेंगे, इसलिए आप यहाँ से निकल लो. Sir, these people will keep opening and closing your finger. It would be best if you leave. So I grabbed my bag and belongings and ran from the Kirki hospital to return to Khadakwasla. My fear was that I would be taken to task for fleeing the hospital without informing anyone or collecting my discharge slip. However, I was spared and no disciplinary action was taken even as the treatment was renewed and finally my injury was attended to. This not so aptly stitched index finger of my right hand remains crooked to date, but it was also instrumental in creating a picture perfect historic pose during a press conference that became synonymous with the phrase कितने गाजी आए और कितने गाजी गए and also adorns the cover of this book. A lot has been written and said about this picture of my crooked finger on social media, which probably would not have garnered as much attention had my finger been normal and straight. Interestingly, this picture also aptly justifies the famous Hindi idiom घी सीधी उंगली से ना निकले तो उंगली टेढ़ी करनी पड़ती है, meaning that straightforwardness should be applied only for those who are straight, but a crooked attitude is needed to deal with the crooked. All along, I have recounted how keen I was to join the army and how much I was inspired by my uncles and others to don the uniform of the armed forces, driven by a desire to serve the nation as a soldier. However, a well kept secret, especially from my family members, was that one of the biggest motivating factors for me to join the forces was the opportunity it would give me to avoid studies, which I suspect was also the primary reason why many of my classmates in Firozpur filled in the NDA entrance examination forms. However, this illusion was soon shattered when I realized that the training at the NDA and the subsequent career in the army service was not all about brawn but entailed a significant involvement of the brain as well. I remember very vividly on the very second day of our joining the NDA, all the cadets in our batch were instructed to visit a store where the Havaldar issued us a whole lot of heavy books on physics, chemistry, and mathematics. As the books were thrust upon us, we looked at each other in dismay, our expressions conveying our inner feelings. We had come here to escape studies, not to be caught up in an even more rigorous quagmire of academic burdens. Seeing our dilemma, the Havaldar came to our rescue, nonchalantly offering the following advice: don't worry, these books are not actually meant to be read. Just take them, cover them diligently, and keep them safely in your cupboards. What a relief! These words were really like balm to the soul. The relief was, however, short lived, and much to our chagrin, we subsequently found that we had to study as many as 30 subjects during the NDA training. It was bad enough that even as a humanities student, I had to delve into the highly technical subjects, but the ordeal was magnified by the roster of specialized subjects, many of which I had never imagined would be part of an academic curriculum, including soldering, molding, welding, carpentry, engineering drawing, and lathe work, among others. It is another matter that the intensely competitive environment in the NDA motivated me to become an avid learner from a reluctant student, and I went on to not only complete my NDA degree with an impressive performance but also acquired an MPhil and later even a PhD degree. However, I took some time to recover from the initial shock of seeing the extensive syllabus and those weighty books, which was reflected in my extremely low cumulative grade point average of 2.0, the barest minimum in the first term. Admonishing myself for this poor performance, I decided to pull up my socks and got down to doing some serious studies. This resolve bore fruit and I passed the final term with a much more respectable CGPA of 6.8. During the training, however, one of the biggest focal points of attention is food. Though there was plentiful food to go around at all times in terms of both quantity and quality, somehow we had a perpetually insatiable appetite. This could be because being very young and at a formative age, and also perhaps largely due to the fact that we were subjected to intense physical activity, we used to feel ravenous most of the time. And the reason could also be the excellent food served in the NDA mess. The portions our gluttonous group consumed routinely included about 25 toasts for breakfast, smeared in butter. However, along with milk, butter was rationed per head, as a result of which we often ate our toasts by dipping them in milk, tea, or coffee, and even water as a last resort. And even after that, our refrain would be, यार आज lunch में क्या है? Buddy, what is the menu for lunch today? The time allotted for finishing this homogeneous breakfast was limited and was immediately followed by academic classes delivered mostly by civilian instructors, some of whom had been teaching in the NDA for more than 3 decades and knew about the cadets' lives much better than the latter themselves. We had to gulp down whatever food we could and rush to avoid being punished for reporting late for class. Since wasting food or not being able to consume the allocated quantity was sacrilege for a cadet, what could not go into our mouths during the stipulated time would find its way into our pockets, and we often arrived in class with bread slices peeking out of the pockets of our khaki dress shorts. One of my most endearing memories of the NDA food was that of devouring endless quantities of chana bhaturas. which were part of the special menu served in the NDA mess on Sundays. The spicy chana also traveled to our rooms where we secretly stored an empty tin container of Rath Vanaspati, a popular vegetable oil that had a huge market in those days, along with oodles of pure homemade desi ghee that my grandmother packed for me when I returned from home after vacation. The Rath Vanaspati container also served as a frying pan, and the ghee was added to it to temper the chana with additional spices, making the dish more aromatic. Life could not have been more heavenly for our group of about 5 cadets, including my long time mate Jimmy Buller, with all of us greedily slurping the chana gravy, dripping with fat and roasted in a puri of tomatoes, onions, green chilies, and garlic. Bless the cooks at the NDA for providing such delectable food to the perpetually starving cadets. Cooking in the cadets' cabins was not authorized, but we ignored this diktat and continued the practice of seasoning the chana. Here, my childhood habit of standing watch when chicken was being cooked in Biji's absence came in handy. The instructors at the NDA must have been aware of our cooking escapades but allowed us some liberties on Sundays, the only day of relaxation in an otherwise extremely hectic week of training. Thanks for listening.